How's everything?
Uh, Things are fine. Baruch Hashem, all well. How are you keeping?
Pretty good.
How's your
One
wife?
second. Yeah, everyone's growing. Like everyone's growing.
Mhm.
Everyone's doing their thing. So let me ask. So, see, you don't like the Americans taking over Gaza,
No,
huh? Okay, let's talk about it. Why not?
because it belongs to the Jews. America cannot make decisions for Israel like that. We are meant
Yeah.
to make decisions for ourselves with Hashem's help. We cannot let America for umpteen years telling us what to do and how to do it. And even though it's Trump, and I like Trump, I like Trump, but I think that this has gone too far, really.
But you saw Netanyahu, like the prime minister, was like standing right there with him.
Yes. I just don't understand what Bibi is trying to do. Doesn't he doesn't he represent the Jewish people?
I mean, the state
Shouldn't
of
he
I
be
mean, the
talking
state of
about
Israel.
this in the Knesset first?
I He's playing along. Just our thoughts are, I think he's just playing along.
Mm.
He's just playing along because if now Israel were to take over Gaza, hell will break loose. So he's coming in like as a mediator, in the sense like a mediator, and then let time unfolds. I'm looking at it in that way.
I hope it's that way, Brother Leslie.
I
I
think so,
really hope it's
because
just a ruse.
he cannot do he can't do it now. He cannot do it now. There's a plan going on. There's something going on. Because now nobody wants the Palestinians. The Palestinians are in a way rotten people. Nobody wants Egypt. Nobody wants, and even Israel, for that matter, rejected them. They also don't want because they know these people are trouble. Nobody wants. So an outside entity has come in. Trump has come in to decide. Okay, we'll do this way. But I really don't think that is the whole plan. I believe Hashim is doing something behind the back.
Wow.
That's what I feel.
It's just this. It's I mean, people for the
Someone had
people.
posted on. Carry on,
No,
Ram.
go ahead, please.
Oh, someone had posted on Facebook, uh, on the map of Israel, and Gaza is American. And I'm like, hello.
Yeah, I saw that. That's so funny.
It is annoying, especially for us who are Zionists, who are religious Zionists. We I just don't feel right at all. If it's a ruse, still I don't feel right. I hope it's a ruse. I
But
hope it's just a ruse.
I want to share something. I don't know how, but I want to share something. Many months ago, I saw a map of Israel. This is posted by a rabbi, if I'm not mistaken, posted by a rabbi. Something about history, and they actually marked out Gaza. Mark, in a sense, they marked out Gaza, that Gaza was not part of Israel. I don't know how far that's true. Gaza was not part of Israel. There's a distinction between that. They
Mm.
said they put all the different tribes, Simeon and all the tribes, but this part was left open. It was not part of any tribe. And when I think about history, I think about the Bible. Gaza has always been a troublesome place.
Yeah.
It's all, even the times of Samson, they've always been on the opposition. So I'm just wondering whether that map is actually accurate. So Gaza is not part of Israel. I don't know. I'm just thinking of it because I saw this map.
It is part of Israel.
I'm just mentioning that what I just saw, sharing.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's like there was Jewish communities that were living there, before
Yes,
2005.
exactly.
Mm.
The thing is, I think a lot of the Israelis are very much relieved by the idea of America taking over Gaza, for a couple of reasons. One, it it um, it makes a permanent statement to Israel's enemies about encroaching on Israel in any form of security, right? And enforcing that idea of attacking Israel is like attacking America, right? That's one level. Another level is it's hard for the world to get really upset when America says, "Hey, we want to take the Gazan citizens out of there, right? And we want to move them somewhere else." I think it's very healthy. I think it's very healthy for the Gazan people, who've been suffering for over a year now, like unbelievable levels. And it's good for the Israelis, because I don't think they could live next to each other anymore after October 7th. You know what I mean? I don't think there's when we saw like the people cheering and celebrating, as hostages were coming in. I just don't think you can live side by side with such people, you know? And there are people who are just there caught in the crossfire. Who those people are, how many of them, I don't know. But having the United States there allows the world to accept that living arrangement, no longer can exist, right? So, that's the thing, I think the downside for Israel could be long term that if America takes over, which it pretty much already did by just making a statement, that America will play a very big role on domestic policy in Israel. Before, they had a lot of control over international policy in Israel in terms of military um, action. America moving the embassy to Jerusalem, created a situation where a lot of people felt very comfortable and safe with the Jew, with doing business and trade in Israel. So that's a big factor as well too. You know what I mean? So, but I think on the domestic level, I think that the problem for Israel long term is that whoever the president is going to really determine, what happens here on the ground, right? Which may be good, which may not. I don't know. So I see the concern on both sides, you know what I mean? But I'm just, just dealing with the trauma of October 7th. You're just trying to get to a place where you could somewhat move forward in life. But right now, it's a standstill. There's a whole population of people that are completely obsessed with murdering, and killing. And I'm talking about even the children, right? And unfortunately, right? And so hopefully, everything will work itself out and we'll be able to, we'll be able to come to some resolution. You know what I mean? Type of a thing. Okay.
Raf,
Yeah, go ahead, please.
one more point, the way Trump had a meeting with Netanyahu beside him, he was saying that, US will own Gaza,
Yeah.
on those lines. And I think that is very wrong. Sorry, I'm having quite a bad throat, but I think that's very wrong. It irked me that he says that US will own Gaza.
I don't really think they will own Gaza. I think it's just a game he's playing.
But he shouldn't say that.
No, it's just a
Because
it's just a political game. He's doing it. That's all. I don't believe he's going to own Gaza. They won't own.
The thing is, I would say if this was like towards the end of a particular administration, if it was towards the end of a particular administration, I would say, hey, you know what? Okay, he's saying this, whatever. But this is his first, not even 100 days. It's like his first 20 days in office, right? So much of his presidency is going to be based off of these statements, like his legacy, right? He came out and made a huge statement. America is going to own Gaza. So that means we're going to have American flags there, right? And we're going to have American tanks and American Air Force Base. And and American citizens will have access to the area, and it'll be basically like Puerto Rico, right, or Hawaii, right? and so that's a real thing, right? That's a real thing, and so that's it's important to acknowledge like the severity of a statement. So I do believe that Americans, but American expansionism has been going on. They're talking about Greenland. They're talking about the Gulf. All these different areas. So America, Canada, right? So America, it seems like American expansionism is like on the rise, right? And they're taking territories and land. They're not really asking for permission. So we'll see. God knows what best. You know, and all right. So let's learn some Torah. I mean, this is Torah. I always talk about Israel's Torah because Israel, the Jewish people, is a proof that the Torah is ongoing, right? It's like it's ongoing. It's very much alive. It's happening. Just the way it's happening thousands of years ago is happening now, right? So okay, so this week's parsha is Parsha Yethro, and we're going to go into the Pesukim in a minute. But this is an interesting thing because up until now, the Torah has very much talked about other people interacting with the children of Jacob, and always from Abraham interacted with different people, and Yitzhak, Yaakov, had different interactions. But this is the kind of like the first time we're hearing about the outside world joining in and becoming somewhat a part of this idea of Am Israel, right? And so Yethro, in many ways, is the beginning of this conversation, right? In this conversation of what is Am Israel's relationship? What is the Jewish people's relationship with the other nations? With the Jewish people relationship with other righteous people, right? Because there's an idea that within all the different nations, that with all the other nations, that Hashem basically went to the other nations and asked them if they wanted to hold the Torah, and the vast majority of them said no. But within those nations, there were people that said yes, right? And so, but they weren't, they were the minority, right? So we're starting to learn about these people that exist at a very high level, right? But they're a part of other nations, and then eventually they find their ways into Am Israel. Okay, so we're going to learn, and one of the objectives for this class is to think about. I'm going to go through commentaries and these types of things, but to think about the idea of learning something out, right? We read the Torah, we read the Pasukim, and and we get to understandings. Maybe we read a commentary, but this thing about learning something out, right? So we're going to take this first verse, and what we do, we're going to call like learning it out, like really learning the verse, meaning that we're going to look at some really amazing commentaries on it, and we're going to see the structure of the verse, and we're going to ask some very smart questions, right? Okay. Well, the sages are, at least. All right, so let's do it. Yeah, so it's Parsha Yethro. Hold on a second. Okay, here we go. Whoa. All right, here we go. Okay, so Parsha Yitro, sorry. Yitro. Okay, so it says, Veishama Yitro, Kohen Midian, Choten Moshe et Kol Asher Asa Elohim Le Moshe Ule Israel Amod Ki Mahotzi Adonai Hashem et Israel Mitzrayim. Okay, so the verse reads like this, right? Jethro, priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law. Okay, so let's learn it out. Let's learn how we're going to learn this first verse. The first statement by the Torah is Yethro, he is the priest of Midian. Okay, that's one statement. The next statement is he's the father-in-law. He's Moshe's father-in-law. Third statement, he heard all that God had done for Moses and Israel. Fourth statement, God's people, how God had brought him out of Egypt. Okay, so you can say these four ideas, right? right? This is what we're going to try to understand. And then once we go through this, then we're going to have a big understanding on how to look at verses in general. So we're going to start with Rashi. And Rashi wants to start with the first words. It says, Veishama Yitro. So he says, and Yitro heard, Shema, right? He heard the Shema. Okay, maybe something different. Okay, so he says, and Yethro heard. He says, what in, so Rashi asks the question, what was the particular report that he heard? So that he came. And so Rashi responds is the division of the Red Sea and the war in Amalek. It says in the Talmud. Okay, second point, he goes off of the name Yethro, right? Yitro, right? Yitro. So he says Yitro was called by 7 names. It says Ruel, Jeter, Jethro, Habob, Hebar, and Cain and Potiel, right? So these are the different names. These are the different names that they have, right? And so and he says he was called Jeter, and he says from Jeter, he says they added. Okay, it's going to come up later. So he says that he was called Jeter, right? And he says Yiter to add, all right, because he added it was through him that there was added a section to the Torah, the beginning of okay, whatever. This is what he's saying. Moreover shall provide. He says Yethro so was called this because when he became a ger and he fulfilled the divine precepts, one more letter was added to his name, and it was a vav. It was called that's where he became Yitro. But his first name was Yeter, and then they added a vav and they gave him Yitro. Right? That's what he said. We're going to learn that later. He says Habab. He said because he loved, right? Havav, and he says Havav is certainly identical to Yethro, as it is said in the book of Judges, the son of Habab, the father-in-law of Moses, and therefore it is correct to say that Habab is one of the names. So they're saying that it refers to him in the book of Judges, and it's referring to Moses, and it talks about his father-in-law. So that's where they're getting this name from. So we learned the first name they got was Yitro, right? Yitro later became Yitro. So we have an understanding of those two names, and that's where Yitro, Jethro, came from. In the word and Hobob, his other name was he said his other name was stated in the book of Judges, and so that's why they said that he had one of his names. He said, but as to he says Ravul, he says there are some who say that this is not identical to Jethro, but it was Habob's Jethro's father may have been seen in Numbers chapter 10:29. Then what is according to this view? What be the meaning of Exodus? They came to Reuel, their father, which is which he says which would then appear to Reuel and Jethro are the same. He says, and it means their grandfather, for the children of their grandfather's father. So to be found in the whatever. So okay. So bottom line is Jethro has 7 names, and there's different dynamics around the names, right? Some names were progressed upon, like Yitter to Jethro. You have names that are representative of different um, of different characteristics, like Habab, like who's connected to the ability to love. But the point is, Yethro had 7 names, and these names appear in the Torah and expressed in different ways. And that's that. So now Rashi is going off of this idea of Moses' father-in-law. He said when Yethro prided himself on his relationship to Moses, the father-in-law of the king. Previously, however, Moses had made whatever greatness he had hinged upon his relationship with his father-in-law, the chieftain of Midian, as it said, and he returned to Jethro, his father-in-law. And he says, Lishma Israel. He says, and Moshe alone was equally important to all of Israel. So he's going off of that statement of he's going off of the statement of what Moses had done for all of Israel. So he's saying connecting these points, right? So the point is, what we're doing that we're going down Rashi's explanation, and Rashi's most of his commentaries is either coming from the verse itself, or he's bringing midrashim, right? And so that's what we're going through right now. It's a little bit dry, I understand, but the point is saying we're seeing the process of learning the pasuk, right? We don't want to just go through it and say, okay, hey, I read it, very nice, right? We want to go through the pasuk, right? And we want to see different perspectives. So Rashi's saying it like this, and he says in this last part that the Lord had brought forth, right? And so, and he says, this is greater than all the things, and therefore I singled it out and mentioned. So a lot of this verse, a lot of the commentators we're going to see are trying to understand why it's written the way that it's written, right? And so we're going to go to my favorite commentator, and now we're going to have some fun. This was a little bit dry, I get it, but we're going to build, because the point is we want to learn the verse like we're in yeshiva. We want to be able to go through it and not just read it and say, okay, this is the first verse of this parsha. No, let's understand what's going on. Let's look at all these different points that are being said. Let's look at, why does God use these points? Why is God saying this to us? God could explain this a zillion, trillion, infinite different ways. Why is he choosing this? So let's go to Orach Chaim. So this is where it gets good. So he says, Orach Chaim, he's going off the point of Yitro, the priest of Midian herd, right? Ve'ishama Yitro Kohen Midian. So he's saying what? So the Orach Chaim asks this question. He says, why did the Torah tell us that Yitro was a priest? Being a priest in a pagan society is hardly something credible. He says, why did the Torah tell us about this? Right? And he says, and you got to think about it from the perspective that if a person's about tshuva, you don't remind them of their past. Right? So he says like this. Perhaps in this case, the Torah wanted us to know the greatness of Yitro, who converted to Judaism. Through he occupied an exalted position in his country at the cost of his prominence and the possibility even his wealth. Actually, he says, the Torah describes Yitro in a contradictory role. This, although he was a leader in his country, and as such, he have chosen a prominent son-in-law for his daughter, as he chose an unknown. So that's a big thing, right? You think about the greatness of Yitro, number one. Like, who is this guy Yitro, right? So we understand that he has several names, right? We understand that he had an exalted position in his land. He was a priest. And so it's interesting, like, in the dating world, when people are dating, I know a lot of people are looking for Shidduchim, and they should all find them very soon. That, it's this idea that, people's families want their kids to marry certain people, which is justified, right? They want people to marry similar cultures, maybe certain religious levels, and these different things. But in this case, it's an interesting dynamic, because Yithro is the ger in this conversation. But the Torah is hinting, according to Orach Chaim, the Torah is hinting at the point that he was at this humongous position, and this kind of like nobody guy that no one knew about, that wasn't a part of the culture, that was from a different place, but he was able to see a greatness inside of Yethro, that he allowed his daughter to not marry one of the wealthy families, one of the prominent people, kings, ambassadors, business people, all these things, other spiritual leaders. He didn't allow, he chose a guy from somewhere else. And you can see how he was rewarded for that. So that's something to keep in mind. It's like, hey, but the interesting dichotomy is that this is the ger, right? So a lot of times you see like gerim will go out to get married, right? You see it all the time in Israel, and they'll meet someone who comes from like a religious family and they really get along, the girl and the guy. But the guy, because he's a ger, he doesn't fit in to the family's like vision for their daughter. And they say, no, this guy is not right for you, right? You got to be with someone who's from this family, who study at this yeshiva and learn this type of a thing, because this is more in the mahalak. This is more in the process of our family. right? And so that perspective is really important to see that the just suppose Yethro was a king in the Goyish world, but he let his daughter marry someone who he saw something special in, but was not at the status, who was basically a ger by them, right? But then the roles reversed. So now Yethro's the ger, and Moshe is the king, is the head of Israel. So it's just an interesting thing that Orchaim is bringing out the fact that no, think about it. It's a huge thing that Yethro allowed Moshe to marry. Like we just look at Moshe Rabbeinu. They didn't know Moshe Rabbeinu. We could read the Midrashim. Okay, so he says, although he was a leader of his country, in such he could have chosen a prominent son-in-law for his daughter. He says, we chose an unknown to him, Moshe, as his son-in-law, and therefore the Torah describes him both as a leader in Midian and Moses' father-in-law. And he says, and at the time, the other aspirants for the people for Zipporah's hand in marriage resented Yethro's choosing of he resented Yethro's choosing of a foreigner. People resented it, right? That he chose a foreigner for over them, right? Because he was a big guy. Like you have all these guys, great looking guys, scholarly guys, and their pagan mythology, and they all were there. But Yethro said, "No, Moshe is for my daughter." Concerning Yethro's portion as an inherent idol worshiper, something that is implied in his title priest. The Torah compliments him in verse 11 and then declares that he found the Lord was superior than any other deity. The fact that a Gentile who occupied an exalted position in his own country and who was religious dignitary to the boot made a 180-degree turn becomes remarkable for the Jewish people. Only after the Torah tells us who this Gentile was prior to his conversion. So this is amazing how Orchaim is explaining. He said, why is the Torah worded this way? Every time we read a verse in the Torah, we should say, why does Hashem write it this way? Why could Hashem could have wrote it 1,000 different ways? What is he trying to tell us? So the Orchaim is bringing out a huge point. So you think about the greatness of Yethro. It's one thing, to kind of like be a person who's kind of like trying to figure out life, and you stumble upon some Torah, some Judaism, and you become inspired, right? And you become inspired to the point where you want to take this and become a part of your life, right? But it's another thing to be in a position of success, right? Some people could argue that. I mean, I could argue against that, right? I could argue against that. But the point is just saying it's another thing to be in a position of success and power and to have the humility to leave all that aside and to remove all that from your life and say, no, I only want the MS, I only want the truth, and that's it. And if that means I have to lose all my wealth, if that means I have to lose my position in society, if all the dreams that I have for myself in my Goyish life, I have to get rid of in order to connect to this truth, so be it. And so this is Yethro. And this is the process of understanding the strength of a ger. Because the last time we really had the understanding of the strength of a ger was holding by Abraham Avinu, who also came from a very prominent, prestigious environment. But there was no Am Israel at the time, right? It was his connection to God and his lineage. He says an additional reason why the Torah has chosen to tell us something about Yithro's former career is that God had revealed all that he done to Yithro. He had not added nor subtracted anything which had occurred, only because people who occupy prominent positions of authority are granted such a comprehensive insight by God. He says, we have described how Joshua was singled out by God to be privy to information not granted to the rest of the people. And so he says, he's going off to the point of all the Lord had done for him, right? All of the world, Kol Asher Asa Elohim Le Shema. So he says all the world that he's done for him. He said this is also an important compliment to Yethro. He endeavored to know all the details of what had taken place. It proves that Yitro was what we term a pseudo Semite, a genuine friend of the Jewish people. When one hates someone, though one is aware of a person's superiority, one minimizes the complimentary remarks he makes about such a person, right? So a person like, if a person does it, like people have jealous people, haters, right? So if a person has a hater, even though that hater knows that this guy's a star, he's amazing, he's going to minimize everything. He said the reverse is true. If one loves someone, one is visibly very lavish in one's praise of such a person. The Torah describes a description of Yethro is such that we realize that he was a true friend of Israel, seeing that the Torah told us that Yethro heard everything. Everything everything God had done for Israel. Why did the Torah repeat that God had taken the Israelites out of Egypt? Surely this was part of what Yethro heard. So this is the thing. So, you think about it, and the Midrashim go in very detail about it. The Midrashim say when this whole situation happened, right? How did the people find out? How did Yethro, when did this happen? Like, what was going on? And so they said when the Yam Suf happened, that all the world saw the waters split in their land, right? Everyone said they saw it, right? Even the water in their cup split. This is what the Midrashim said. It was a huge thing, and everyone saw it. And so, who did the people go to? The people went to Bilam, according to the Mepharshim. And he went to Bilam. They went to Bilam and said, "What's going on?" And he said, "The Jewish people are going to receive the Torah." And he started explaining to him the different things that he was told that happened and this and different prophecies explain what happened. Everything from Bilam was from the dark side, but he was still able to communicate. And so Yethro was one of the people who heard about it from other people. But the thing is, out of all the people in the world who heard this, Yethro was the only one who came, right? He was the only one to come. Yes, he brought Zipporah, the kids, the whole thing, right? But the point is just saying, but he was the only one who came. All these other people knew about it. Conceivably, millions upon millions upon millions of people heard about it. Yethro was the only one that came, and that's the key, right? The key is that when we talk about the connection to Torah and a person's path to Torah, they have to understand that that path to Torah is a permission, right? God has to grant you that ability to walk into those righteous steps, right? God has to give you that ability, right? And if He doesn't open those doors for you, it's not going to happen. You got the best rabbi, all the information, all the sages, everything. It's not going to happen. And so Yithro was a person who was invited by God to join Israel, and that's how we have to understand the Ger. The Ger was invited by God, right? And we're learning that. So he says we may assume that Yethro had been aware that that no slave had ever escaped from Egypt. Accordingly, it says in Sanhedrin, Yethro had been one of the Pharaoh's advisors, and as such, he had been he had been thoroughly familiar with the system of what Egypt made sure its prisoners could not escape. When he heard about Israel having left Egypt, he could not believe this. And the Torah therefore had to repeat this aspect of God's achievement as one that Yethro heard about. Once he found that he had heard what he had heard to be true, he became convinced of the greatness of his son-in-law Moshe. This is why the Torah links the names of God and Moshe. It was Yethro's understanding that God had gone out of his way to enhance the reputation of his prophet Moshe. And when the Torah describes that Yethro heard and ordered, in which it impressed upon him, it did not link the Exodus. All right, when the Torah describes what Yithro heard, and the order in which it was expressed from, it did not link the Exodus to the other miracles and the other achievements by God. Likewise, it would have described Yethro's hearing and that he dug out. The Exodus is presented as a separate achievement by God in Yethro's understanding. The one that made all the other miracles, the one he says the one that made all the other miracles, he heard about unbelievably. So it says Kema so he says hearing all that God had done enabled Yitro to believe the rumors he had heard. Our sages says in Zavachim in chapter 30, chapter per 116, disagrees with which of the various miracles, it disagrees to which of the various miracles heard had impressed him the most. So there's a discussion in Zavakim in about what was the miracle? What was the thing that he heard that really inspired him to come? Right. So he says Yethro heard he has impressed. He says Yethro heard about the impressed him the most. Some felt that it was the splitting of the Red Sea. Others said it was the defeat of Amalek. This whole argument is parallel to our perception accordingly to the rabbis who hold that Yithro was the most impressed by the fact that the Israelites defeated Amalek. It makes sense that Yethro and his pilgrimage is related in the Torah immediately after the story of Amalek. Yethro had reason that through God exact retribution of Pharaoh, who had proven in inordinately disobedient to God. This did not prove that God had done what was for the sake of Israel. So he says, so you could have said like, oh, everything that happened wasn't for the sake of Israel. It's just saying Pharaoh was wicked and God punished him, but it wasn't for the sake of Israel. He said you could see it that way. He said that the Israelites had simply become the beneficiaries of Pharaoh in Egypt being punished. Yithro thought that if he had been correct in assessment of the exodus of Egypt, the exodus of the Israelites, he did not mean that they would be able to maintain themselves as a nation in which competition with all the other nations, which God saved the Israelites from the attack by Amalek. Yithro realized that they were indeed God's chosen people, that what had occurred was the beginning of a new world order. Okay, so that's how they saw it, right? Just keep going, and we're going to learn something about Eretz Israel, the land. Okay, so it says the Torah mentions the fact that Yethro heard about the Exodus immediately before reporting that Zipporah and her children of Moshe. We understand this in the connection with the Midrash Rabbah, where Moshe wanted to take his family to Egypt with him. At the time, Yethro wanted to know why Moshe wanted to subject his family to the strain of travel and the suffering in Egypt. Moshe told him when when the Israelites would leave Egypt, he received the Torah on Mount Sinai, he would be keenly aware of the absence of his family at the event. Hearing this, Yethro allowed Moshe to take his family alone. Having heard about the imminency of the Israelites' arrival to Mount Sinai, Yethro felt obliged to bring support of children without delay. Okay, so just a few points. We're going to read a little bit about Eretz Israel because that's the destination, right? The destination is Eretz Israel, right? And so we're going to learn a little bit about Eretz Israel. But the point is saying that first verse is a world, right? And there's so many things going on. I mean, there's so many things happening, and every single word, every single phrase that the Torah is using is not just like randomly. It's not like a book I wrote or somebody else. This is God Every letter is signifying something. Every phrase, every word. So when we learn these pages, when we learn the Pasukim, it's not enough just to read Rashi's commentary. You have, if you have to go online, you have to read many commentaries because each verse is an entire world. And if we accept that it's a progression of ideas and these are all building blocks, then we could become closer to God's message. So let's learn a little bit about Eretz Israel. And last week we read, some Rabbi Nachman. And you know what? We're going to do it again, right? And we're gonna read a little bit about Eretz Israel. I know I said that a few times, but hold on, let's bring the screen up, and we should be good with the share today. But here we go. Okay, let's do this. All right. So Eretz Israel. It's the ninth time I said it, right? So it says Ikar Emunah. Bekinat Tefila Bekaniat Nisim. So he says like this: with true faith, prayer comes into its own. Prayer is okay. So this is Rabbi Nachman's collections of different teachings of Rabbi Nassam, and we should continue. Okay, prayer is bound up with the concept of bringing about miracles. To obtain this level of faith is only possible in the land of Israel. For it is there that the prayers ascend to the world above. With the faith such as the one can accomplish with one's prayer wherever it's necessary, one can work real miracles and wonders in the world. Kishi po gini be'eretz Israel shehu be'kiniyat emununa. So he says, in the very essence of Eretz Israel, as a spiritual concept, is bound up with Amunah and tefillah. And he says, if we abuse Eretz Israel and we go down into the exile, prayer goes into its own exile. And then it is impossible to pray and bring out the miracles in the world. And he says, Israeli be'emet. He says, to be a true member of the people of Israel is to move away to move always to higher and higher levels. Do this to do this is impossible except through the sanctity of the land of Eretz Israel. Every upward movement which we have to make towards holiness can only be accomplished through the land of Israel. And he says, and the same is true of prayer. The ascent of prayer also comes about only in the land of Israel. He says, Bezikut HaTorah Shemi Shikina Zokina Le Eretz Israel. He says, and he says, and through, oh, 1 second, somebody just came in. Okay, all right, let's go back. All right, so we're learning about Eretz Israel. We're learning about Eretz Israel, the holiness of Eretz Israel, the opportunities of Eretz Israel. We're learning it through Rabbi Nachman in the greatness. And he says, although it is the power of Torah that draws into ourselves that we can obtain the level of Eretz Israel, likewise, when we are present at the time that the Tzaddik draws the Torah into this world and teaches in public, we ourselves have a share in the Torah that is revealed when the Tzaddik by the Tzaddik. This is also gives us strength to come to the land of Israel. Afsar levod le'eretz Israel leki'im. She said, it is impossible to come to the land of Israel without difficulties and suffering. That is true. The root of all the difficulties and suffering lie in the slanderous image of the land, which is put about by the wicked. So we're hearing a lot of this, right? It's a war, don't do it. Everyone's leaving. So he says, but the power of the Torah, which we draw into ourselves, enables us to overcome all the obstacles and the difficulties and suffering. The more profound a person's grasp of the Torah, and the greater And the greater of the tikkun he brings about through his obtainment. The greater the victory over the obstacles, and he will succeed in reaching the land of Israel. Mikei Shaba Levakinat Eretz Israel. He says, when a person obtains the level of the Eretz Israel, he is worthy of being called a man of strength and valor. Before he obtained this level, he did not. This level let him not be. He says, guard on his armor, boast himself as he is putting off. I guess it's a verse in Kings. I wasn't clear on that. He says, but when he has gone through the battle successfully, and he is worthy of the name of a man of war. Al yedeh sheno tinina sadecha le'eretz. He says, when somebody gives charity to cause in the land of Israel, they become merged in the air of the land, which is the holy breath that has no taint of sin. He says, through this breaks the force of severity, and darkness are banished from the world. This is also how it is possible to escape from the distracting alien thoughts which come during prayer. The mind and the thoughts become very clear and refined. This is a tikkun habrit, a remedy for the abuse of the holy covenant. Wow. Eretz Israel hu shegula levanim uma selet. So he says he says in the land of Israel possesses a mystical power to sustain to stimulate procreation, and it also brings benefit from the divisiveness and the hostility that exists between people. Through the sanctity of the land of Israel, the true guide, the leader of our age, will be revealed. Truth will spread throughout the world, and even the heathen nations will return to the Holy One, blessed be He, and serve Him with one consonant. And so Ze'al Yedei Tefillah Bekocha Zokina Levo Eretz Israel. So he says the mitzvah of Sukkot is a segula for coming to the land of Israel. So he's saying doing Sukkot is with a lot of passion and love is a segula, like a remedy, like a enhancement for someone to connect to the energy to bring them to Eretz Israel. Liri od be ma pal tam al she rashaim. And so he says, in all the ways, he says the only way to see the downfall of the wicked is through the aspect of the land of Eretz Israel. Al yedei tefillah meketi kuno mamit no se or zechut avot. And he says, praying with intense devotion reveals sparks of the radiance of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The patriarchs laid the foundation of our faith, and this faith is embodied in the prayer we recite, and we live with in the lives of the patriarchs were completely bound up with the land of Israel, as is our faith. The genuine prayer, therefore, is possible for us to feel the sanctity of the land of Israel, even today, when we are in exile. The land itself under the domination of the Central Akra, the forces on their side. Thus is written that the Torah, that even when Jews are in the land of their enemies, even then their uncircumcised heart will be humbled. And then will I remember the covenant of Jacob, and also my covenant of Isaiah of Yitzhak, and also my covenant with Abraham. And I will remember, and I will remember the land. Through the revelation of the sanctity of the land of Eretz Israel, we will witness the destruction of the wicked. We're watching that now, no? And he says, not only will we be delivered from their lands, we will see them suffer a very evil they sought to inflict upon us. Mitzvah chalachia bekinat yirasat eretz. Israel. So he says the mitzvah of challah, separating the priestly portion of the dough, is also bound up in Eretz Israel. And all these things have to be really thought about very in depth, as you're saying. And he says the effect of the mitzvah is likewise to reveal the radiance of the fathers and the holiness of the land. Mi sheikh havanato le shamayim be'emet. He says the motive for making the journey to Eretz Israel should be purely spiritual, to draw closer to God. A person who goes there with this as his aim will certainly benefit. Merely by stepping foot on the land, he becomes merged with it. The transformation by the scarce characters that is why even one who walks 4 cubits in the land of Israel will surely inherit the world to come. He said, you just walk a few steps, you're in. He says in Ketubot. He says, on the other hand, if a person if a person is motivated by nothing in to do with devotion of God and cleansing himself of evil, then he will. Then what help will the land be to him? The land will vomit him out, as it vomited out the nations that was before you. Al yedei kedusha to Eretz Israel zokin le'amuna. So he says, and through the holiness of Eretz Israel, one can obtain pure faith. This is the gateway to that long, deep, patient breath, which is the remedy for anger and depression. He says, "Ve sarik levakesh ma'asem yitvorek." So he says, and he said, pray. He said, pray to God and give you a desire, yearning for the land of Israel. You will succeed in reaching there, and it also that he should pray, so plant yearnings for the. He prays also that he plants a yearning for the land of Eretz Israel in his heart, and for all the Siddiqim. He says, "Ma shehashem yitvareka ma shalem le'adam midah." So he says, and a person replies, measure for measure. A person repays, God repays man measure for measure. Now, nowhere is the repayment more exacting than in the land of Israel. But this is a really great kindness. We know that God repays in accordance to our deeds. And he says, when by thinking about the situation God sends us, we can gain an insight into our own behavior and learn how to improve. Sarik Israeli Kalaliot Hakadosh Shebekola Hakadoshot. He says, in the holiness of the land of Israel is the the impetus of the holiness, encompassing all the other levels of holiness. And it is that we can free ourselves completely from the materialistic view, which claims that the events that take place naturally, we come to know and believe that everything comes about through the hand of God. And he says, and when a man knows that he becomes like God in his prayers to divide the light from the darkness, the Midrash comments the light refers to the deeds of the righteous, while the darkness referred to the deeds of the wicked. And he says, and it's a very good to recount the deeds of the righteous, such stories help us cleanse and purify the mind. But for every episode in the life of a Sadiq, we find that a corresponding story is told about one of the wicked, because the realm of evil is a mirror image of the dominion of holiness. For example, we are told that Pinchas flew in the air. It is also related that the wicked Bilam flew in the air, except that he used the forces of witchcraft to do so. The power to divide light from darkness gives us the skills to distinguish the stories about the Siddiqim from those who are not. To be able to divide the light from darkness, requires that the ultimate level of faith, which can only be achieved in the land of Israel. Sorry for going in on this like this. Ikar hamocha ve'hachachamahu rach haaretz. Israel. So he says the genuine enlightenment and wisdom comes only in the land of Israel. But even the people of Israel outside the land have the power to draw enlightenment and wisdom from there. So even if you're not here, he's giving you guys a segue. Even if you're not here, and say you're in India or you're in you're in Indonesia, right? He's saying that you, even though you're not in the land, you can still draw light from the land. He says every single Jew has his share in the land. According to this share, so it is the wisdom that draws from the land. But those who insolute the honor of the Almighty, God forbid, God forbid. Wait, hold on. Insults. Okay, according to this share, so the wisdom he draws from the land. But those who insult the honor of the Almighty, God forbid, are cut off from the radiance of the land of Israel, and they fall into the mentality of outside the land, which is one a difficult and is which is one of difficult and divisiveness. And he says this is the source of all the conflicts and division we have, which have become so prevalent. He says, Mokin ala Michelle Aretz Israel. So he says the enlightenment, right? He says the enlightenment that can be achieved in the land is possessed, it possesses the quality of pleasantness. Pleasantness of the Torah and all those ways are peace. Giving charity and expressing the charity of of the land forges a vessel with which to receive this pleasantness, one can rise above the mentality of outside the land. But the more deeply you sink into this mentality, becomes it becomes a um, it becomes more difficult to extract them from it. But this alien mentality can even begin to affect the land of Israel itself. Instead of peace there, the conflicts in the land of Israel. This is the reason why today the divisions in the land of Israel are so deep and are outside. There's the last part. And he says the graves of the Sadiqim literally. He says Kever Sadiqim sorry, Amitinima who Kadosh Kadusha Haaretz Israel Ma'ash Mamash. So he says and so he says, in the graves of the Siddiqim literally have the holiness of the land of Israel, as it is written, the righteous shall inherit the land. It says in Psalm, and they said the land of Israel is a tikkun for abuse of the holy covenant. That is why one should make every effort to visit the graves of the Siddiqim, the sanctity of their burial place for the place for the tikkun of the covenant. It was a little bit different to the last year, I know, but I wanted to cover some stuff, you know what I mean? And I wanted to really, think about this idea of what it is to learn one verse of the Torah, right? And when we go through this weekly Torah portion, it's to not just look for, okay, I don't understand what this means. Let me look at Rashi, right? What I'm saying is, it's like saying, no, go and question why the things are what they are, what the implications are. That's why I like Orach Chaim. But you have to look at the whole picture. What's that? Why is it building up? What's the structure? So that's what we wanted to learn through that process. And we wanted to learn about, and then I also wanted to make something, I wanted to connect to the power of Eretz as well, and to yearn for it and to create a lack within all you guys to see that, you know what, your destiny is to be here in the land and to figure out and to ask Hashem and to daven for Hashem to bring you here because we're the Gula, right? And we all got to be together. Anyways, any points, any idea, any points, any ideas?
Good sharing, Rabbi. Good sharing. Can see it applying in Israel now at this moment. A lot of it. Can see a lot of it applying there.
Well, the key thing is visualizing it, right? Visualizing walking on the plane, getting on there with all your bags, and to be able to achieve your total spiritual enlightenment, right?
Mm.
And in that and having that taste of your potential in his lifetime.
Yep.
Okay, so we went a while. I have another class I give in 30 minutes, so I may even try to push that a little bit. But B'vat Hashem, next week, please go through the Parsha. Go through it, read it, look at the structure, look at the building. So many things come out in this Parsha. There's like the first court system is designed. All these things are coming out of it, right?
Mm.
The precursor to Mount Sinai. Some people argue was it before, was it after, whatever. Anyways, Baruch atah Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen.